Hello and welcome to the show, David. It's a pleasure to have you and to meet you.
Well, thank you so much. I'm excited to be here. I enjoyed our little visit beforehand too, and getting to know you a little bit. So yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Yes, it's my pleasure. I just really enjoy having conversations. Sometimes I know the guests, sometimes I don't. In this case, I don't, but I'm going to get to know you even better right now. Is there anything you want the listeners to know about you to start?
Yeah, it was fun. Like you sent me this series of questions to kind of think about, and it's just my brain went to so many different places. Uh, you know, I, I think when I look at the your show and what it's all about, and just really, when I started out in life, I was pretty messy, dyslexic and ADHD and allergic to everything in life. And, it was a long, slow start for me. I joke that I feel like I'm 20 years younger than I am because the first 20 years didn't quite count. I wasn't quite here yet. And so, I think that, to me, when we look at our life journeys and my life journey, that there's a whole bunch of challenge in the first part of my life that
Mhm.
I just see a direct setup to what I do today and how I show up in the world, and it's how I got here and it's how I became who I am. And when I look back on my life, there's just so much gratitude. I think I hope that's the right word. Sometimes it doesn't feel like gratitude. Sometimes it feels the opposite of that. But when I really sit with it, the challenges we have in life, like I feel like so often they're set in place intentionally to bring us to here. And
Absolutely. I really couldn't agree more because I think that so everything that you're talking about, the slow start and all of the challenges that you're have either overcome or overcoming, the whole
mhm,
process of it
mhm.
all really has led you to where you are today. And it wouldn't be the same had you not gone through some of that. So I think that it doesn't get wasted for sure.
It all has purpose.
Yes. All right. Three words that you would use to describe yourself.
Ah, so yeah, innovative, inspirational, and unique. Uh, so,
Ooh, I like these words,
yeah,
innovative, inspirational, and unique.
yeah,
Ooh. And I like to say that it starts to paint a picture of
mhm.
not just how I see you and the listener sees you, but how you see yourself. And
Sure, sure.
yeah, those are all really, I love those words. All
Yeah,
right.
it's funny. I was thinking unclassifiable, too, how do where do you fit? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, one of a kind. That's a good thing. Have you ever played Two Truths and a Lie?
I have, yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so you're going to hit me with three things, and I'm going to see if I can tell which one is not true.
All right. This was fun too. I got like 10 things, so let's see what comes out of my mouth. Let's see. So I was struck by lightning 3 times.
Oh,
I have had a lot of experience with UFOs, including missing time.
whoa.
I was actually teaching a barbecue class at the same time as being vegan.
Oh my gosh. Okay, let's see. We've got struck by lightning three times, lots of experiences with UFOs,
Mm,
including missing time, and teaching a barbecue class at the same time as being vegan.
mhm.
Gosh, part of me wants them all to be true. I'm actually going to say that, gosh, the fact that you used a number with struck by lightning, I'm going to say that that's the lie and that you were struck by lightning, but the number's different. How'd I do?
You're dead on. That's pretty good. You're pretty intuitive too, huh?
Okay, how many times
Only
were
only
you?
once. Only
Oh
once. I was
gosh,
in college delivering pizza and got knocked on
oh,
my face in a driveway.
gosh, I can't even, how was that? I
It,
mean,
it was it was so bizarre. I remember just shaking, and I I
oh,
I was in the middle of the city and I just ran into the people's house. I opened their door and ran in. There's a little girl in the living room. I remember her looking
oh,
at going, "Mom, the pizza boy just ran in the house and he's shaking like crazy."
oh my
And I'm like,
God.
I think I just got hit by lightning. And they're like, you okay? Is there, how much is the
Oh,
pizza?" I'm
Oh
like,
my gosh. Oh,
so it
wow,
was
that's
a
wow. Did
kind
you
of a
have
wild moment.
any after effects from that, from being struck by lightning?
I'm sure, it's I think during that time was when a lot of my intuitive psychic type stuff was really activating for me as well. It was always kind of hidden in me, but I think it did open up some interesting aspects of me. And it's hard to say what was what, but
Right.
there was a time period where I'd also had a pretty severe concussion right in that window in a mountain bike accident, and then
Oh,
there was just a series of my whole everything in my body being shaken up. Um,
wow.
and I think it led to a lot of activations and a lot of
Oh
openings.
my gosh. Okay, so that means you have had lots of experiences with UFO, including
Mm.
missing time. So tell me, what does that mean, missing time, where you can't track what happened during that time? You don't remember that time?
Yeah, yeah. There's a series where it was just happening a lot, where I would see ships, or in fact, the first time I saw them, I had an experience and didn't remember it for until exactly a year later because it was on the winter solstice. I remember going up on mountain watching, we went to see the sky, and uh, and then just completely forgot about it the next day. And then literally a year later, we were going, "Well, what should we do for the solstice?" And then all of a sudden, like this memory came back of what we did the year before, and seeing all these ships and the experience. But the missing time was I was driving back from Steamboat, Colorado, late at night, coming up over Rabbit Ears Pass and kind of coming down the back side of it. And, I'd seen a ship earlier that night. And then I was driving and all of a sudden there's streetlights everywhere. And I'm like, what? I'm on Rabbit Ears Pass. There's nothing up here. And I was driving into a town that was 45 minutes away. And I'm like, oh,
Wow.
wow. Something just happened for the last 45 or the last whatever time that
Wow.
was. It was
Wow.
it
I
was
just
pretty
don't know what
interesting.
else to say besides wow. I keep saying
Yeah, yeah. I
wow.
mean, it's amazing how often I think people have had that type of experience. Like it seems to keep happening. Like there's a relationship or something. And I know quite a few people who once said, it's present in their world. It seems to become present more often. And so and I think that's all been part of what's kind of opened up me in different ways too to what I do.
Right. Well, that is just fascinating. Okay, tell me about teaching a barbecue class the same time as being vegan.
Yeah. I used to love meat and I loved barbecuing, and I was actually a culinary teacher at an alternative school in Denver. And so I was teaching a barbecue class, and all of a sudden it just came in just very clear knowing that I couldn't eat meat for a period, and that I just had to stop. Like I couldn't put it in my system, and so I'm like, well, shoot, what I got this barbecue class I'm teaching, how's that gonna go? And so, well, the kids are like, vegetables again. I'm like, yeah, but I still cooked some meat with them, but it wasn't easy for me. And then I was vegetarian for a while, and then vegan for probably until this past year. I started eating a little bit more meat, but my body just was very clear what I needed and what I didn't need. And for a long period, I just couldn't
Oh,
have it in my system. And now I can a little bit, but
okay.
still
So
selectively.
now you eat a little bit of meat.
Yeah.
It's interesting how people, go through different phases with food and choosing and not choosing and all of that.
Yeah.
Um,
And for me, it was very grounding. Like, I think life was very grounding that time, and I needed to be very light. And then as life has been feeling very light, I've needed some more grounding in food. I think it's almost like buoyancy control, It's like how much, if you've ever done any scuba diving, that buoyancy control vest, like your life vest, you can put more air in it or less to make yourself more buoyant or less buoyant. And I feel like my eating and what I put into my system kind of does that. If I need more grounding, I'll eat heavier. If I need more lightness, I'll eat lighter. And depends on what I'm experiencing in life and what life's requiring of me.
that is so fascinating. Thank you for sharing all of that.
Of course.
What's one of your favorite movies of all time?
Another great question. It's funny. I flashed back instantly to this movie Breaking Away, which was probably from the 80s, and it was a cycling movie about this young kid. I don't, do you remember this movie where
I do,
he was
not
big?
like vividly, but yes.
Yeah, he was big into cycling, and like his family just didn't get it, and like there's a big clash between him and his dad, thinking that, you know, because he's shaving his legs and all these things, and his dad just can't handle it. And he loved the Italians, and then they came. There was a race coming to the area, and they came in, and he was able to race with them, but then they basically cheated and knocked him off his bike.
Uh,
And so there's like this disillusionment of his heroic, and he had to come back to kind of finding himself. And so I was always big into cycling, and so I think that the whole thing just I don't know, it was really something that
you
stayed with me for years and years.
you could kind of relate, it sounds like, on some level, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Well, I haven't thought of that movie in a very long time. How fun.
Yeah, yeah, it's funny when I think about it. I feel like I can visually see each scene, you know, from it. It really impacted me for some reason.
And it's so interesting. That's one of the things I really like about art or
Hmm.
performing art or art,
Yeah,
visual art, is that it really can impact you in ways that you don't expect.
absolutely,
And
absolutely.
who's somebody that inspires you? Who inspires you?
Yeah, you know who instantly came up is Bo Eason, who's a speaker trainer. He was a professional football player in the 80s and like a all-pro safety. Went on to reinvent himself after injuring out of the
Oh,
NFL and became a playwright and worked off Broadway for in a one-man play for 14 years. And then
ah,
he went on to become a speaker trainer, which was where I connected with him. And
oh,
did some work with him, and then after a few years of me working with him, he became a client. And it was really, you know, it's funny. I've worked with some, you know, really amazing people, but like there's something about having somebody that just impacts you in such a powerful way, and then, you know, them becoming my client, so I see, you know, their whole inner world, and for it to all stand up, you know, is really a.
right.
It remind me, I used to work in restaurants, and I'd be like, you know, certain restaurants where I ask the people like, do you eat here? You know, and sometimes when people work at restaurants, they don't eat in the restaurant because they've seen the back of the house, right? They've seen the
Oh
kitchen.
gosh,
And so,
so
you know,
true.
like he's always somebody that I really admired, and then to get to, you know, be in the back of the kitchen and go, man, just like through and through, right? And so uh it was like another level of inspiration for me.
Right. Well, that's so interesting how he was kind of out there and then you kind of came in your circle and now you're serving him. That's just such a neat juxtaposition of how the whole thing worked.
Yeah, yeah. And
Very
so
cool.
fun. We actually were in La Jolla a lot too, because he does like at the theater there. He does an event there every 6 months.
La Jolla Playhouse or another theater?
Oh, oh, what is the name of that one? It's beautiful. It's all like wood inside that has like the vertical wood bars and the um
Oh,
it's right by the, I think by the Safeway there.
oh yeah, yeah. Okay. I can't think of the name of it right now, but I know exactly what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
beautiful theater. So I'm in La Jolla, at least I used to live in San Diego too, but I'm in La Jolla at least every 6 months.
Oh,
Yeah.
so fun. All right. And a piece of wisdom you keep handy.
Mm. You know, getting to see the inside of so many people's lives. Um, yeah, it's funny. This isn't what I thought I was going to share, but here it goes.
Yeah.
Uh, Seeing the inside of so many people's lives that so often we look at other people's outer presentations of selves, and we
Yes.
compare our inner world to their outer world.
Right.
And you know, just that realization that no matter who we are, no matter what level we're showing up in life, we all have our stuff, we all have our things that we're going through, and it's so easy for us to assume that other people have figured something else out that we haven't, or that
Yeah.
aren't going through, or that you know, don't have these struggles, and that they're unique to us. And it's just not the case. I mean, as humans, you know, nobody gets out of their childhood unscathed, right? So
Oh,
it,
that's so true.
that's you know, I mean, it makes me think of this example. Such an interesting one to me. I remember um I've worked with a few people who, you know, society would probably call them a trust funder. Like they to other people, they look like they have it made because they were given this trust fund and they don't necessarily have to work, like they're well taken care of. And then they go out in the world. And you know, it's so interesting to me, the unique challenge of being put in that position. because prior
Hmm.
to working with people that were in that position, I thought probably like a lot of people do that, like what a positive, what a setup for them to be so taken care of, but not realizing what a massive challenge, what a massive thing that is to carry of how do I trust myself to show up in the world when I don't have that drive that says I have to show up or things aren't going to be okay. And
Right,
when that's messed with in a person's life of you're fine, you don't have to show up in any way, and that human drive to show up, it's amazing that like the unique challenge that it creates for people that don't have that, because it's kind of a fear that drives us maybe out into the world that says I got to go out and express myself, but what if I'm already taken care of? What if I don't? And it's amazing
right,
how having that soft place creates such a harsh environment internally of how do I find my expression of self
right.
without without the discomfort, and it creates its own massive discomfort. And so I hope that makes sense
Wow.
the way I
Yeah,
described
it
it, but it's
does. Yes, absolutely does. Yes, thank you. And I think you've brought up a good point. I think there is assumptions around seeing people that, quote unquote, don't have to work,
mhm,
that they've kind of got it made. And yet,
mhm, mhm.
and I mean, you bring up good points about really, no, that's not really the case at all.
Absolutely. And whatever the thing is, like we all have our piece we're working through. And so, I like that's one example for one, kind of subcategory of our population, but everybody has their like when we look at it and go, gosh, I wish, you know, um,
Yeah, yeah,
it's always a misnomer because everybody's
right.
carrying something.
Right. That's such a good point. That's absolutely true. Well, David, now it's time for our deep dive, and we're in a mental health series. We're calling it "Let's Talk About Mental Health" because
Mm-hmm.
obviously we want to continue to normalize it more and more. Because I think
Mm-hmm.
if we poll just about anybody and everybody, either they or somebody they love has gone through something
Mm-hmm.
that is a time of struggle mentally, either
Mm-hmm.
yours or a loved one. So tell us about a time either you or a loved one struggled with mental health.
Yeah, it's again, it's so fun having these questions, to think about because 10 different things showed up. And
Ah,
I went through a divorce last couple years. And so it was really just an interesting experience. I was married for 25 years, and and one of the things I did when I first, when we first separated was I rented a place out in the mountains in Colorado that was pretty isolated out on a dirt road, and really just wanted to do this kind of deep dive into myself.
right.
And I mean, it's such a long time to be integrated in a in a family structure that you're pulling apart, and in the midst of it, like I was still working, so I get myself all clear and straight, go on the calls with my clients, and then go back to this dedication I had to really work through my stuff and pull up as much as I could. And I remember one particularly kind of challenging day when a lot of emotional stuff was coming up, and I got this message, as I often do, kind of these channels that come through me, and said, this isn't going to last that long. You maybe have 4 months left in this, and don't waste it. Like, you're going to be held underwater, yeah, for the next 4 months, but there's so much available to you right now in these 4 months. And if you're trying to get out of it, if you're trying to get back above the surface right now, you're
Wow.
missing the point of this. Like, turn every rock over, like just commit to being underwater during this time and seeing what in this vulnerable state that you're in wants to show up and be cleared and be understood better and be released and be processed. And it was a really
Mhm.
amazing experience for me because it shifted this piece of like, I gotta get my shit, I gotta get back to this versus like, oh, I only got 4 months. I only got 4 more months of this. I better take every bit of advantage of this. And it really shifted my mindset in it.
Wow.
And it's something that often shows up, for me with clients too, when they're going through a really challenging time of like, like this is temporary. Like, don't waste it. Don't waste this time, And they're like,
Right.
screw you, right? Sometimes at first, but they're like, but as they settle into it, it's like, yeah, like what, like everything that we go through has such purpose for us. And when we can really see it as this opportunity and value that purpose, and know that it's setting us up for something on the other side, that I truly believe that the universe is constantly pushing us towards our life purpose and will use anything at its disposal to get us there. And if we see that, that similar to the idea that the universe is conspiring on our behalf, and it's not a straight path, because in order to live our life purpose, we need to work through things. We need to recover from experiences we've had. We need to see ourselves in different ways. We need to grow and become what we're capable of becoming. And, if we try to make that too straight of a path, we don't get where we're going. We have to really go deep into those moments and let them have massive value rather than just trying to get our head back above water.
Well, that is extreme. I mean, very well said, David. I mean, I can really see so much wisdom and discernment in that,
Mm.
truly. And so you've mentioned a couple times having clients. So
Mhm.
now
Mhm.
you're going to have to tell us what you do, because it's obviously in this space somehow. Tell me what you do to help other people.
Yeah, yeah. So I have a system that I created that really just channeled through me. It showed up quite spontaneously, called Aligned Living. And it teaches people how to restructure their energy field so that, so many of us that are very empathic, as I can definitely feel that's in your field as well. We walk out into the world and, you know, our sense of self is often a reflection of that. We have I was like this emotional body where we're feeling everybody else's stuff. And it's like, cameras and microphones that are out there filming and recording everything and playing it in here. And so our experience of the world is often being inundated by it. The world often goes first. We walk into an experience, we feel it, and then we respond to it. And that feedback loop is always running through us. And it's often where the outer world is louder than our inner world. And that was always true for me. And when I had that spontaneous experience, when this download happened for this work, it was over 8 years ago, and it instantly reversed that feedback loop where I could feel this sense of myself much more strongly than my sense of my surroundings. And then there was this
Wow.
whole piece of sorting through my self concept, because I didn't realize how skewed it was when you're seeing yourself as a reflection of your surroundings rather than feeling yourself directly. And when we start to do that work, it just brings us home and starts to dispel a whole bunch of, they're usually not our positive stuff that gets dispelled. It's usually like, our struggles and challenges and ways we've seen ourselves that just isn't really clearly who we are, or ways we've had to cope and show up in order to manage the experience of the world being much louder than we are. And when we reverse that, to have a quiet experience and to be around people, um, any of us that are empathic, it's extraordinary, and what it does for our nervous system and what it does for our
So,
relationship with ourselves.
okay, when you say shifting energy,
Mhm,
how,
mhm.
so is this kind of like you are working with clients in terms of, like you say, how they see themselves, how they're showing up in the world? And then is this, well, tell me more about it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so to me, it's very mechanical, and that may sound kind of like a weird thing to say about energy, but we're used to our Wi-Fi, we're used to all these things that are happening invisibly. That there's information that gets passed, and any of us that have felt our empathic nature, we could feel somebody who's upset, and maybe they look happy, but they're like something's off. Like, we can look at them and go, it doesn't match up what's going on here.
Right,
And so we walk through a world that's constantly streaming information at us. And a lot
right.
of it's, people's resentment and anger and judgment and fears and jealousy and all these things. And they're still mixed in with all this beauty and positivity. But when it comes at us all the time, we're receiving that information. There's something in us, something innate in us, this, and I refer to it as our emotional body, that has the ability to receive that information. And we're often just wide open with it. We just walk out and go, what's the world telling me? As opposed to going, what if I don't need that to be louder than me? It's still interesting
Right.
and I still value the reflection, but maybe like 10% volume and 90% should be me and 10% should be that. But we've
Mm,
never regulated it. And, my take on that is that, you know, there's a lot of five sensory people on this planet. who, use their taste, touch, smell, hearing to understand the world and understand who they are. And as babies, that's what they use, right? They put everything in their mouths, they touched everything, they they,
Yeah.
they had that experience. But those of us that had this extrasensory ability, this ability to feel other people's emotions, we just turned that on outside too and said, who are we? What's going on here? Who are these people? And what does this mean about us? And it never occurred to us that they didn't need to be locked on outside. We just turned them on and left them. And so when I got this spontaneous download, it was being shown like we have control over that. We can place that same ability to feel deeply, that empathic ability, we can place it on ourselves and feel ourselves as deeply as we've been feeling everybody else. And the moment we do that, there's a reprioritizing that happens. We move from impulsively taking on everybody else's discomfort and trying to make them comfortable so we can be comfortable, and
Uh,
to really feeling what we need. And then we get to choose if we're going to help other people rather than impulsively having to abandon whatever we're up to reprioritize somebody else's discomfort because we've known we can't be comfortable if the person next to us isn't.
you know what? This is so fascinating to me because I feel like I mean, you've already sensed that I'm empathetic
Mhm.
and like
Mhm.
everything that you're saying, I am so flabbergasted to think that there's one, the recognition of it and the awareness of it,
Mhm.
and two, then the
Sure.
idea that this actually can be shifted.
Yeah, yeah. And it's very mechanical, like it's instantaneous because it is that literal. My awareness, if we close our eyes and go, oh my God, I can't believe it got dark, like that's not a surprise to us. But if we take our energy and our awareness and we tap it into somebody else's emotions and we feel it inside, and then we stop doing that and tap into ourselves, like if we sit with it for a minute, it becomes logical. It becomes, well, yeah, that's not surprising then. If I plug into me instead of plugging into that, I have a different experience. And now I feel myself first and I feel myself more powerfully. And oh wait, I don't think I want to sacrifice myself for that. I think I want to do this for me. And then when I do this for me, I'll be able to support people a lot more. And then people stop being contagious, so I can stay present with them without getting exhausted. And I can help them way more than I could when they were contagious, when I was actually trying
Right.
to make myself okay by helping them. And so it's amazing, as you said, like that realization as empaths, like, oh, there's an adjustment to that thing. Wait a minute. Why
Yeah.
didn't anybody ever tell me?
Yes, yes, that's the part for me that's very intriguing. The
Mhm.
idea that there is actually a way to shift that. That's very compelling. Okay, so
Yeah.
I'm curious now about the timeline, this spontaneous download.
Mhm.
This come on the heels of that very dark and difficult time where you had the realization. When would you say you were depressed and anxious? I mean, if we had to put words to it, would you say that that was a period of that?
You mean when I was describing going through divorce or the,
Yes, yes.
I wasn't.
Okay.
And it's such a weird thing about because I'd already had these tools, right? And so I could be in this highest part of myself and also aware of my body was carrying a lot of stuff. There was old trauma, there was all these experiences, and there was old patterns. And so, when we develop that capacity to tap into exactly what we want to tap into, which is, our highest version of us, we have that. And so we can utilize and go, God, this feels really good, but I can't ignore, I was sharing the body keeps the score, right? Wasn't that Louise Hay's piece,
Right.
right? We can't ignore all the stuff that we have experienced in the unconscious and all that. And so it's so interesting to have this really beautiful place that we can be and also know that there's some really rough stuff going on and go, I'm going to save that beautiful space for a different day. I'm going to go into the rough stuff. And because like that's what spiritual bypassing, right? If we just stay here and just go, oh, I'll just keep holding that other stuff away because I got this other great place I can be, but it affects me. It keeps me from showing up. It keeps me from expressing myself. It keeps me from feeling expansive inside. And so much of the work we do once we claim that space is we start to go, I'm cleaning all this up now because I'm in here with it. When I was out there instead of in here, it didn't really matter so much what was in here because I didn't need the space. And this is what I've found with clients is like, as soon as we move in, like I'm cleaning up this, and we do it very quickly because we realize like, oh, this is just me now. Like I don't need to be corded or tethered to how it happened or the collective wound behind it, which makes it so hard to move. I can just go, is this serving me anymore? And is this really my truth? And when we can sit with it, it tends to dispel, it tends to fall apart, it tends to clear. And it moves very quickly because we actually have a reference point for our truth rather than a reference point of more challenging stuff coming at us. And does that make sense? It's
It
I know it's a
does, it does. So you already had these tools before you had that
Mhm.
dark time, is what I am gathering.
Yeah, yeah, which made it kind of a not that dark time, even though it was super challenging. I mean, there's times in my
Right.
life before I had the tools where I had very dark times, and it was like there wasn't a reprieve. But at any moment, I could be going, and that's I think part of that message I got was stay in it. Like, don't keep pulling yourself out trying to get into a brighter place. Like, stay in it. Like, value this, value the struggle, value the emotions, value all of that. Um, because you can bypass it. You can just keep going back here. And I would
Right.
do that to show up for them. And then I'd fall and go, okay, let me drop back into this other part of me that needs some support. And
Wow.
I showed up to support myself, kind of basically is what it turned into.
Okay, so I think I've got a couple more questions. Yeah, I mean, very intriguing.
Mm,
Um, I guess one thing I'm wondering is how could this be helpful for people who are struggling, like maybe with a
mm,
season of depression or
mhm,
anxiety or some of these other mental health struggles? Do you
mhm.
find that this could be a helpful tool for that?
Yeah, absolutely, right? And so when we look at depression, anxiety, all these things, there's a cause behind it. There's something that we're experiencing either inside ourselves that's trapped in there, where we're reliving it and we're looping in it, and it has its own life that just pulls us into that place. Or, for me, like I had massive anxiety. I used to have anxiety attacks a lot, like around college and just after where I was just so sensitive to energy coming in that it would just overwhelm me at times. And I was really struggling with reconciling the way the world was with the way my inner world was. And just that different, like
Mhm.
I just couldn't figure out what my place was here and couldn't see my future. And so as I'd feel all that come in and just be in complete contrast to who I am, like it just really spun me out a lot. And so having, particularly with anxiety, when we start to gain control over what we allow in and what we don't, to me, anxiety is this influx. People, it feels like it's coming from inside of us, but it's generally not. It's generally coming in
Mm,
from the world in this overstimulus. Kind of like if you've ever
yes.
been, like struggling with something and you don't have much bandwidth left, and then somebody comes
Yeah.
in and they start trying to dump their stuff on you and they want to tell you about, how rough they have it. And you're just like, I can't do that right now. But if we couldn't say I can't do that right now, and it just keeps coming at us, it pushes us over the edge. And then we self-isolate and we shut down and we come up with all these coping mechanisms. And so anxiety is a big one, but depression is too, because it's losing track of who we are. It's getting caught up in a loop, usually in some trauma, some experiences we've had that demonstrate to us this possibility of who we might be that's doesn't feel good. And if we don't have a reference point of who we truly are, like that other reference point becomes our identity. And I've worked with, quite a few people who are in depression and they're just like until that as they start to have a reference point, they have to be really ready at that stage of depression to go, like
Mhm.
something's got to give. This is not
Right.
interesting to me anymore. Like there's nothing the drama of this, the like I just I like I'm done. Um and so that place, like then they go, once they have that other reference point of like, oh, this is where my light is. And that's what I was talking about when I was in that stage. I'm like, space going through the divorce. I was like, I know where my light is. And I also know where this other stuff is in me, and that's not my light. And
Right.
so if I have both at the same time, I can really work through it and I can get clear about who I am and who I'm not. But if I
Right.
don't have a reference point, I'm just, you know, churning around in the struggle, and I don't have a place to stabilize off
Mhm.
of that's a greater truth
Right.
than, whatever my depression is.
Yes, absolutely.
Mm.
It Just there aren't words right now. I have
Mm.
to process all of this, but I have one final question, then I want to know where people can find you.
Sure, sure.
How could this work with people who, like a person of faith? You
Yeah.
know, do you feel like this is how is that, how could it be compatible with that versus, or
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
it's not?
Yeah. And some, I have clients that are, everything from, devout religious people that, that is their 100% their reference point, all the way up to atheists. And they just see it as energy, and or I should say all the way down to atheists. I don't know. I don't want to say it. But you know, when we look at it through the lens of energy, which is often how I experience God as an energy. And if that was uncomfortable to me, I could just simply call it energy. But if calling it energy was uncomfortable, it's God. And so,
Right.
to me that like it's the lens at which we're experiencing the energy. And I never used the word God before. Like it was I think I had a lot of kind of religious challenge stuff growing up. Like I'd go to church and go, this doesn't feel like what they're saying, like it was, a lot of people. I remember actually my first house was, or my second house, I guess, was across the street from a church. And I remember watching them come out and just like cut each other off in the parking lot and running, trying to get out. I was like, that didn't, like, I don't know how to reconcile this. And so, I kind of blanketed it as like, oh, that's not, um, but what I found is I work with a lot of religious people where they have this very clear, direct connection with God, this feeling that says, like He's here to support me, and when I can, the more direct that I can feel to me, and that's really what happens when we go in and reference off of ourselves, we start to reference off our connection with God, and when we reference off our connection with God, it just becomes alive in us, and we get the sense of who we need to be, and go, I can't have this much light coming through me, this much connection with God, and be these other things that I've been stuck in being before. And
Mhm.
that is that reference point that I was talking about. And so, we can call it our truest self, we can call it God, we can call it energy. But it is one of the things I found is that my religious clients, it almost is easier for because they already know it. They just have known it in a different way. And when they go, God, like this is the connection with God I've been looking for. And when they feel it,
Mhm.
they just go, oh, like I just wanted it to be more direct. I wanted it to be more palpable for me. And then when it is, it just, everything that they believe just comes into a much more concrete experience. And so it works really well. Um,
Well, color me completely intrigued, fascinated, compelled, curious, all kinds of wonderful words. If our listeners are like me, where can people find you?
Yeah, so my webpage is davidwaldas.com. And so all my programs are listed on there, whether it's, I do group programs and I still do some one-to-one. And then I'm launching a coach's academy to train people to do what I do. That I've been doing it already for the last uh, really 6 years. I've been training coaches, but I've been kind of hand selecting clients and going, hey, would you like to learn to? And now it's like I can just feel how it just needs to be out there. And so really, so excited about launching that and getting this in a lot of people's hands, these tools, and
Fantastic.
so that it can get out there even more.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you, David. I am beyond grateful. For me, this was a divine appointment. I am very yes, very curious. And listeners, if you're curious too, go check them out, davidwaldas.com. And that Waldas is WALDAS.com.
Correct. Correct. Yeah. Thank
All
you so
right,
much.
David. Thank you so much.